Welcome to my plot presentation on The Miller's Tale. I'd like to apologize in advance for what you're about to be subjected to. Before the telling of this tale, the miller is utterly sloshed or drunk and interrupts the monk from telling his tale and insists that his tale will surpass the greatness of the knight's. Knowing this, I will now begin narrating The Miller's Tale. The tale begins with the descriptions of our main characters. There is John the carpenter, who owns a house in Oxford, and Nicholas, who lives in a spare room and studies astrology. Nicholas was poor and thrived on singing, reading, and studying. John is married to the wild and flirty Allison, who at 18 is kept in the house at all times to ensure that she doesn't make a cuckold out of him. Allison is described as the most beautiful woman alive, with all the cliché soft skin and trimmed eyebrows. Any man would want to sleep with or marry her. One day when the carpenter John was on business, Allison and Nicholas were having a flirty conversation. Nicholas hits on her and tells her that if they don't make love, he will die. At first she calls him a creep, but then she likes him too and swears on the saints that they'll make love when the carpenter is out of the picture. Sometime later, Allison decides to be a good wife and go pray at the church. There we meet Absalom, who is the handsome womanizing parish clerk who has a huge crush on Allison. He had such love for Allison that one night he came to her house in Oxford and tried to show and sang to her window, but she just ignored him. Another time he tried to show his acting abilities by performing on stage, but she shot him dirty looks and embarrassed him. Allison gave all her affections to Nicholas and left Absalom in the dust. While the carpenter was away on business in Osney, Nicholas and Allison decided to hatch a plan to fool the carpenter. Nicholas loaded a few days' worth of food into his room and told Allison to inform the carpenter that she hadn't seen him all day. There he stayed in his room all weekend. When the carpenter became suspicious, he tried to have his servant bang Nicholas's door open, but instead the servant peered through the door and saw Nicholas on the floor staring at the ceiling. When the carpenter found this out, he pried open Nicholas's door with a crowbar and ran inside. Nicholas began to warn the carpenter of the end of the world, saying that there will be a terrible rainstorm equivalent to Noah's flood from the Bible. The carpenter, immediately worried about his wife, Nicholas tells him that he can save him and Allison if he follows what he says. Nicholas tells him to buy 3 large tubs and bring only 1 day's worth of food, since the flood will subside by 9 a.m. the next morning. He also tells him to buy ropes so that they can hang the boats from the rafters, and an axe so that they can cut themselves free and float with the flood. Finally, he instructs him that while he is on the boat, he must pray silently and cannot even look at his wife, or it will be too distracting. The carpenter set off, worried, and on Monday night, the carpenter, Allison, and Nicholas were all in individual tubs with cheese, bread, and beer, praying silently. All was quiet for a long time, and soon the carpenter had fallen asleep after concentrating so harshly on his prayers. Nicholas and Allison descended from their tubs and made love all night long. Meanwhile, Absalom was in Osney and happened to hear that the carpenter was purchasing large tubs from the woolmaker. Believing that the carpenter was out of town, Absalom made a plan to visit Allison and profess his love for her. He believed he would get at least a kiss out of her. So he set out that night to her house, where he knocked on their door and professed love. Immediately, Allison replied that she did not love him and that she was in love with someone else. Depressed, Absalom requested that she kisses him out of respect for him and for Jesus. She says she'll only kiss him if he leaves after, and he says he'll go after a kiss. Preparing for the kiss, Absalom wiped his lips and waited for her, but when Allison came to the window, instead of her head, she stuck out her butt, and Absalom kissed her butt, literally. Pulling back, Absalom was disgusted and began rubbing his lips on the dirt and cursing Allison. He heard Nicholas and Allison snickering from within the house and was filled with rage and vengeance. Immediately after, he set out to the blacksmith's shop. There he grabbed a red-hot iron poker and set back out to the carpenter's home. Once more, he knocked on the window. Absalom told Allison that he brought her a gold ring, a family heirloom, that would be all hers if she gave him another kiss. Nicholas, who was up, decided it would be funny if Absalom kissed his butt too. Sticking his rear end out the window, Absalom asked Allison to talk so that he knew it was her. In reply to this, Nicholas farted, and outraged, Absalom stuck the poker into Nicholas's butt. He cried in pain, screaming, "Water, water." John, the carpenter, believed the flood was coming, and sat up right away and cried. He chopped his boat from the rafters, which sent him bolting to the ground. The fall made him unconscious and broke his arm. Allison and Nicholas cried out to the neighbors, and when the carpenter came to, everyone dismissed him as a crazy fool. From that moment on, the carpenter was known as a psycho for his foolishness. That is the end of The Miller's Tale. I apologize.